last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live from a tiny studio somewhere in North America. This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host, the silverback of ufology. Here's Don Ecker.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another new edition Dark Matters Radio. And tonight, along with Mr. Mark Center. Let's see, where is Mark Center? There he is. And Mr. KGRA, there he is, joining me as always. And tonight, our very special guest, Commander Cobra, who is joining us from somewhere in the great Northeast, up in the boondocks, from what I understand. Commander, welcome to the show once again. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, Don. As always, a privilege to join you guys. Jerry, just great to see your smiling face. Mark, as always, wonderful.
You too, buddy.
So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, today, I don't know if you realize what today is, but it's a rather famous, if not outright infamous day in UFO history. 77 years ago today, a very, very famous incident happened that basically, in my humble opinion, became the springboard for the modern UFO age. On this date, flying out of the state of Idaho in his private aircraft, Mr. Kenneth Arnold was flying over near Mount Rainier in the state of Washington. And this is something that a lot of people may not be aware of, but one of the reasons he was flying over there, a United States Marine Corps transport plane had disappeared somewhere over there with a load of U.S. Marines on it, just flew off the radar, aircraft, Marines gone. And the bottom line was any pilot that was over in that area was requested to do kind of a search around to see if they saw anything. However, Arnold saw something very mysterious. He saw 9 aircraft of some type, not discs, not flying saucer-shaped craft, but actually more like a boot heel-shaped object flying in a perpendicular line, and he didn't know what the heck they were. They didn't resemble any type of conventional airplane. At that time, jet aircraft were not yet up there zooming around, and they seemed to be going unnaturally fast. So, being very familiar with that area, he picked 2 points and timed the length of time it took for a craft to go from his point A to point B. He guesstimated that they were flying somewhere in the vicinity of 1,200 plus miles an hour. Now, in 1947, our top of the line fighter aircraft okay, in level flight could manage approximately 450 miles an hour. So whatever they were, he had no idea. He radioed it in. When he landed, okay, he was met by, among others, a number of newspaper reporters. He reported what he saw, and ergo, boom, the flying saucer craze was on, and it never really left us. Now, 27 years ago, in 1997, was the 50th anniversary of the Roswell event. Roswell happened approximately a week or so after this infamous sighting, whatever it was in Roswell that came down, something came down. And the Air Force had been under increasing pressure by the public and others wanting to know just what in the world they were hanging on to. Well, 50th anniversary, they came out with a book called Roswell Case Closed. Once again, they tried to shovel it under the rug. Now, the bottom line was, okay, they never released that booklet to anybody until after the press briefing. And I can certainly understand why. They were using, among other things, okay, to try to explain this away, as, for example, the bodies that witnesses claimed to have viewed in the immediate aftermath of Roswell were actually parachute anthropomorphic dummies that the Air Force were conducting tests with around 1953-54, dropping them from very high altitude. And when the colonel who was giving this press briefing was asked about that, he claimed it was something that they were calling time compression. Other oddities that they tried to use in order to explain away the Roswell event. They had photographs in there of space probes from NASA. One in particular from 1972. They had this thing proudly displayed in there. Now, how somebody in 1947 could have seen something from 1972?
Right.
Forget it. Okay, it's just pure crap. Now, I ended up.
Could that be that time compression thing, though? I mean, have you given that any credit?
What?
That they saw something from 72 and 47.
They remotely viewed it, obviously.
Yeah, time compression. I mean, that seems like a pretty easy 1, 2, 3.
Hey, Don, I don't think they drop dummies. I think they drop politicians, but that's just my view.
Well, if they didn't, they should have.
Same difference.
If they didn't, they should have. But anyway,
that night I guess, huh?
I went on the NBC Nightly News. Normally, Brokaw would have been the host, but he was off that night.
There's no way he was going to sit with you. He could not be outshone. He was not going to do that.
Lion Brian Williams was in the chair. Okay.
Combat Brian.
Yes. Lion Brian. And he was the host that evening. But hey, look, things haven't changed much, have they? And Cobra, I'm really curious in getting your take on a lot of this, because hey, this date is pretty important, believe it or not.
It is. It is for a lot of reasons. I started out initially with a pretty strong belief. One of the early books I read about Roswell, the authors claimed that they had received a copy of a typewritten report on Roswell, and it was delivered to them, and that was the basis of their book. And a lot of things they put together from that. They had a photostatic copy of the report in there. The font of the typewriter matched typewriters of that era. So there was a lot there. But as the years went by, I concluded that, and I've been to Roswell a number of times and flown through there. Actually, at one point, even flew right over the area where the crash was supposed to be located at. A little bit difficult to find. I concluded that it was not the event that most believe that it is. I think it's tied heavily to the use of balloons for the surveillance of Russia and then Soviet Union, and their detonating different atomic weapons on the surface, and the gathering of intelligence that we're doing for that. But the area around Roswell has a lot of other events that do not get a lot of attention that do have an extraterrestrial kind of bend to them that gets my attention. I think it's probably the very best first case of showing what the government, through the guys and through the officers of the Air Force, was going to try to control this information.
Well, I gotta tell you that I have to agree to disagree with your assessment. Number one, okay, plain old balloons. Balloons are balloons are balloons. And the acoustical equipment you're alluding to was basically off the shelf stuff. Look, the Russians never set off their first test bomb until 1949. This was 1947. So that never made sense to me. And as a matter of fact, Kevin Randall, one of the premier Roswell investigators, proved beyond any doubt that there were no balloon launches in that immediate area at the time. Now, you had two guys, okay, go out and pick up that debris. You had Major Jesse Marcel, who was the intelligence officer for the 509th, a World War II veteran. The other guy was a counterintelligence officer by the name of Sheridan Cabot, okay, who made his career by lying. As a matter of fact, he lied that he had even gone out to the debris field at one point with Marcel, but he did, okay. And Marcel, whatever the material was, he found, they scooped up a bunch of it, brought it back. They couldn't identify it. It was certainly not a balloon. And look, any World War II veteran would have been immediately able to recognize a balloon. Okay, I have no doubt about that. Now, I'm not saying, on the other hand, that it was an alien craft. That's not what I'm saying. I think the jury is out. But okay, that being said, Marcel, and I'm sure you've seen interviews with him where he described this material. They tried to bend it by hitting it with a heavy hammer. It just bounced off. The stuff was as thin, he stated, as the tin foil on a pack of his cigarettes, and they could crumble it entirely up, release it, and it immediately reformed its shape. It was just doing things that one does not associate with 1947. So I don't know what it was, but I think you're off the money there with your Russian collusion. Okay.
Well, I'm glad you were able to bring that in. That on my bingo card, that's one space filled. Look, I hear you. Here's my problem with Roswell: the best and worst documented UFO case in our history. There are so many players and so many lies. I have read reports from people that are that have the credentials to be historians that tell me that amongst the debris they found rope. Now, why would extraterrestrial vehicle have rope? Rope, that linen type rope that we would use, line that we would use. I have heard and understand that the hieroglyphics that were seen inscribed on some of the ribbing material has been traced back to like a novelty kind of source. My problem is that, and it's not so much a problem. It's a good thing and a bad thing. To me, it demonstrates that someone had the plan pretty early on. What they were going to do. Was this the buildup from experiences with Foo Fighters? Was this a buildup or a response or a preparation for things that they experienced up to this date? That the Air Force was ready to start a disinformation. So there's somebody who's got that on the bingo card tonight. Disinformation has been put into the lexicon tonight. Is that what they were after and what they're achieved? When you talk about the UAP, UFO, Mount Rainier, and you think about how quickly the press was there, because obviously there's a lot of press around for the missing Marine transport, I would guess that, but how quickly that circulates in an era where the radio and someone needing to get that out, there was a design early on for that information to come out. A couple of weeks later, we have this event. Now, there are other events around Roswell that, to me, are absolutely bone-chilling, and they get no attention. The encounters over nuclear stockpile, atomic stockpile, weapons that were bunkered that had activity around them, to me, amazing. There's also a very interesting commercial aspect to it, that this was a very dormant story for a long time. And then in the 70s, it comes back on the scene, and I have no complaint against it. I'm just saying that there isn't a long historical tradition documenting what happens. And in the 70s, it blossoms back out, and it becomes a much more social event.
Two things
I think
brought that about was In Search of and Chariots of the Gods brought interest back into Roswell.
One of my favorite
Well,
shows.
They got a great interview with Marcel on that show.
They did.
In 1996, I believe it was 96, I interviewed Representative Stephen Schiff, the congressman from the state of New Mexico. Now, the reason I got Schiff on the air, he had made quite a splash at that time. He got the GAO, the Government Accounting Office, involved in a search for records from the Army Air Force. Back in those days, this was, a month or so until the Air Force was stripped away from the Army and made its own military entity. But he got the GAO to look for the documents, the communication records of the 509th. And gentlemen, this is something, and nobody talks about it today, but this is important, very important. 3 years running, 46, 47, 48, all those records mysteriously disappeared. Illegally, I might add. Okay, because by law, by federal law, those records had to be there. Somebody removed them, got rid of them, did something with them. They were gone, okay? Now, this, Bailey. Sorry about that. My beagle came over here and she got tangled up in my headphones, yanked them out of my ears. Somebody had gotten rid of those documents, and to the best of my knowledge, there's never been any acknowledgement on what happened to those and what the end result was. But hey, isn't that interesting? Now, at the time in 47 that this happened, the 509th was the only spot on planet Earth where nuclear weapons were stored. And to the best of my knowledge, I think the 509th had either 10 or 11 devices there in the event the war would have broken out that they could have deployed. All right. But when you're talking, Commander Cobra, about things coming in there over those storage areas, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that. Could you expound on that a little bit?
There is a lot of reports of activity around the base at Roswell, now a civilian airport, when the 509th was there. Lots of reports post Roswell as well. And again, it's a harbinger for the future, where you're going to have all through the 50s and 60s reports of UFO, UAP activity over missile silos, the famous shutdowns.
Right.
We have a very famous event that happened up at then Sac Base, Loring, Maine, at the very top of the state of Maine, where aircraft and vehicles were there, strange helicopters show up, and all kinds of aircraft. When you look at, I believe, if I remember correctly, years later when the 509th moved, I believe that the 509th was the FB-111 squadron, was that then at Pease Air Force Base, which is in the Portsmouth, New Hampshire area, very close to Exeter. In fact, it was the lights of the base were supposed to be used for the Exeter UFO events. Again, there's a common thread here that shows up of facilities that have nuclear weapons that have these activities. Now, I believe some of them are obviously going to be attempts by other countries to do intelligence work. I believe some of that, but there's others that just do not make sense and defy any real capability, even today, to have something fly over as close as these are. It's one thing to fly over at a very high altitude at high speed to do that kind of work. So Roswell is one of those first events. And some research into the reconnaissance work that went on there and the types of high altitude balloons. They aren't the same balloons, Don. A balloon is not always a balloon. And these balloons and the way that they function and the altitudes that they went to was considered some of the most exclusive and controlled information, because we did not have the aircraft. We were losing airplanes trying to penetrate the edges of the then Iron Curtain as it was descending across Europe and going through parts of Asia. The U-2 had not come online yet. So the types of aircraft that they were using, as you were bringing up earlier in your opening, were very limited, very incapable. Jet aircraft had not really made the mainstay yet. They were showing up. It really isn't until Korea that you get that kind of really big jump in that capability. So you had a lot of intelligence probing. And there's another part that Roswell is connected to. There were spies during the Manhattan Project of all shapes and colors, but there was a particular group that sold out the information. Sold is not, they didn't even probably make any money out of it. They did it because of political and a kind of a zealotry to communism, and the world was somehow going to be peaceful. We could all just get along. And if Stalin had the capability, then the United States wouldn't be able to lord it over. I believe that was a big part of the legacy, that they wanted to make sure that the greatest kept secret of the time of World War II, the Manhattan Project, no one wanted to admit how badly it had been penetrated and how badly a number of the scientists were collaborating and sending out information. I mean, there's a very interesting, if you've watched any of the Oppenheimer and the surrounding Manhattan Project films that have come out, there's a very close parallel to a lot of activities that go on in the UFO, UAP kind of study world. I know you don't like both, but I always try to plug the show. So I always put, like I'm speaking both dialects. So I think there's a lot there that leads to a desire not to have the level and the degree of the damage to be known to the public. I think peace and establishing peace and maintaining it was riding very heavily on the capability that we were the only responsible people that had it. And of course, that didn't last very long. And it didn't last very long.
Peace by superior firepower.
Yeah. And then we were approaching the age of mutually assured destruction. MAD. How perfect an acronym for that. So those are the kinds of things I wouldn't be surprised on if it was as you are summarizing it, but there are just things that do not add up to me. And I think that is partially on purpose, that the ability to throw as much crap into this to obfuscate, to Jerry help me. Yeah, whatever that word is. Jerry's looking it up. He's offline, folks. That's why he's
No, I'm here.
Were you aware of the missing communications records from the final
Yes,
night?
no, I've heard this a couple of times, and I think this is one of the reasons, another legacy that came out, the Freedom of Information Act gets a little bit of a kick that comes up many years later, decades later. Because of this, we keep records, but we don't know where they are routine that has come up. Now, that is an extremely interesting angle on this, because everybody wants to see the file that has the picture and the documents. But when investigators really get into things, what most people in this kind of business look for is they look for those kind of accounting records. They look for those things that are kind of normal, procedural things, like the unit diary, the record that's kept at a watch desk. Those kind of documents are invaluable when you're working things backwards, because it has what most would consider fairly mundane pieces of information, but they are critical to setting up a timeline. It says when a colonel or a major or the first sergeant or troops that deployed or vehicles that were pulled out of a motor pool. It tells those things, and then it documents, because people have to track this stuff in the military for those that weren't in it. It goes all against the budget. It just don't get to throw stuff up. If you burn up all the fuel and you burn up all the time that you have with personnel or equipment, that's got to come from someplace else that's going to be replenished, and it has to be recorded. That's one of the biggest things that you chase down, but it's not sexy. Accounting is not sexy, right? Isn't that what that ad says? The accounting part's not sexy. Or taxes aren't sexy, accounting is. So accounting is sexy, taxes is the one that's not sexy. That's what the commercial is. That's the kind of thing. But to get away with not being able to produce those files, and to get away with saying, well, they just simply disappeared, and we don't have the ubiquitous fire, that's always the routine. Well, they're all kept in St. Louis in a basement in a government building, and it was a terrible fire. Or they were all, so to not do that and get away with it, it sets.
Are you referring to the DoD veterans files that were destroyed? Is that what you're referring to, St. Louis?
It happens on clockwork. As you probably have concluded, Jerry, I don't think that's any more by accident. I think it's on design.
That's interesting, because a lot of military files
absolutely
were destroyed, especially World War I veterans.
Right.
Almost 90% of them lost.
And if it's not a fire, it's a flood. And we always seem to put the stuff in the basement of a building near a major river that floods on a routine basis. How not to have these records available. Now, times have changed a little bit. And we think, well, now in this digital age that we live in, well, everything is put onto the digital age. But it's obvious that it's easy. It's even easier to manipulate records that way.
Bleach bit.
Or you go in and you physically change the information that's there to go in a direction. And I think we see at this event, this, I would say 2-month period, starting with the flight up by Mount Rainier, what is reported went on is the pattern that's we're going to see happen and grow from there. There's no doubt that materials did leave there and went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base or Dayton Field at the time.
So, Don, how long, if you can recall, I'll put a quarter in you, Don. How many years before and after did Roswell, how long of a span were they housing and involved with the storage and execution of the bomb there? Was it a few years before Roswell and a few years after? How?
Well, the 509th was the air bombardment group that dropped the two devices on Japan.
Right, right.
Okay, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, when the war was over, they came back. They went to Walker Field, all right, in Roswell. Roswell, basically at the time, the 509th or the air base there was their bread and butter. All right. Now, I honestly don't recall when they moved out of there. Okay. But I think it was sometime in the 50s, wasn't it, Commander Cobra? When they left the
That's
509th?
correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So the big reason was they're getting ready. The B-29 was the only aircraft, and that particular group of B-29s were the only aircraft capable of carrying the type of weapons. Two things happened. There's a breakthrough in how the weapons are designed. So they're not quite as big as they once were. And the delivery system included a parachute so that the crews had a chance to get away. So that was the two things. Now, the B-36 Peacemaker is just getting ready to come online. The gigantic, biggest bomber ever built. It was huge. 2 jet engines, I believe, on each wing, 6 large reciprocating engines on the wing. It had a pusher design, huge airplane. Never actually saw any combat time, but it was the premier setting up. And of course, SAC is starting to form up. At that point, with the difference in weapons and the difference in aircraft coming up, getting to coastal areas now becomes a much more important area because you need to have the ability to get closer to where your target area is. They're no longer going to fly to like Hawaii and then maybe into Alaska and then get prepared to go in for the strike. They know they're going to have to do it a lot quicker. And of course, the jet aircraft are starting to approach. They're getting ready to come online. Smaller weapons, faster. And there's another major change that happens in Europe and in the Pacific. It's no longer going to just be dispersed by SAC. There's going to be tactical nuclear weapons that are placed on alert in places like all through Europe, flying on very, very small jets with a very small device. The Navy had them on board carriers. They had all kinds of airplanes that they were going to use for that, as well as all through Asia.
So about it was 54 when the Buff came online, right? The B-52.
57, I believe, is when the Buff starts to show up. It's the B-47, the 6-engine, smaller jet bomber, crew of 3 or 4 that was on it. And it now starts to take the load. The other part that's very, very critical to the whole bomber mission is that the development and refinement of aerial refueling shows up. That was almost as critical, if not even more critical, because what it allowed was 2 things to happen. You could have a bombers in a location, generally the middle part of the United States, in a location that would allow them to meet tankers at the coast, meet tankers at other coasts, and be able to perform the mission. And then under General LeMay, later on, there was the keeping bombers in the air with nukes, flying 24 hours a day, all through Europe, all through the North Atlantic, all through the Pacific. And they
had shifts with the pilots, from what I understand.
Right. Usually put 2 crews on board. They stay up, for as long as they possibly could. Usually someplace in the neighborhood of about 20 hours, you need to put the plane down because you just could not. They're going to consume internally oils and fluids and things like that. They could refuel. But for the strike capability, that was a big part. And that presence is how the United States believed it was holding everything in line. And of course, then you had other activities that are spreading out with the Cold War and then the not so Cold War activity going on. So the 509th, interesting legacy on that, interesting mission and complete from start to finish. an incredible key part of what went on. So protecting secrets there is a big part of it, but it doesn't surprise me looking at the historical record that shows visitations, activities around these facilities, henceforth from the time from Roswell on.
Well, that's what I'm kind of drilling down at, not knowing a whole lot of the history there. I'm wondering how long was that specific type of weapon on the ground there, right? How long were they there until they were moved or whatever they did with those? Could that not be a coincidence, but could that be one of the issues why we ain't going to give you these reports and things, because we were doing this stuff first place in the world to do it at this spot at the time that you guys want this information?
Mark, I think you're making a great point, and anybody can convince themselves that national security doesn't allow that. And I don't disagree from that. There are certain things that won't be said, but there's interesting records. There's interesting parts that show up and don't show up. And not to have a cover story, why don't you just come out and say that these records can't be released because of national security, because of the mission that was associated with? To say that they're lost, they can't be located, all you're doing is fighting more speculation.
You said it best. It's the nature of the story, right? Because we have Corso and the guy that wrote his book, a complete Nimrod. So you have all these grandiose claims that are still coming out about this case. It's a shit show. Well, it is, right? It's just a shit show.
I knew Colonel Corso, Philip Corso. Didn't know him well, but I did know him. I had communication with him.
He invented your cell phone, damn it.
No. For whatever it's worth, all right. He told me. Vicky and I, at the time, with UFO Magazine, were involved with some people here in Los Angeles that had connections to the Corso people, including his son. All right. Some of this gets a little tangled up, but the bottom line was, I asked Colonel Corso some very pointed and penetrating questions.
Really?
About elements in the book. And Corso told me he was furious with his co-author, Bill Burns, furious that stuff got put in there that did not come from him. All right. Now, Corso was the real freaking deal. All right. The guy had been counterintelligence in World War II, chased Nazis and communists all over Italy. All right. The guy was the real deal.
Yeah.
He would have been more than happy to slap you in the teeth 3 times with his 45. That's the kind of guy he was. Okay. Hated communists, absolutely loathed Nazis. And he got a reputation as, for whatever this is worth, as a real right winger. But the guy was the real deal. In Europe, he was the battalion commander and had authority that in the event that war broke out with the Soviet Union, he had a nuclear battery. And he had the authority to launch on his decision whether they needed to or not. Now, you don't give
Are you talking about nuclear artillery, or what are you talking about?
Yes, I am. I'm talking about nukes. And you don't give that to a loose cannon, all right? And Corso had that ability. So, I'm tired of all these people nitpicking at him. Now,
well, Don, come on.
The stuff that he claims, okay, that he found in this Roswell debris. For example, night vision. Well, hell, the Nazis were working on night vision and had night vision in World War II. Not like we have it, not starlight, not that kind of night vision, but infrared. All right. They had weapons that they could wield with infrared and snipe your ass in the dark. You'd never know it was coming unless you had something to detect the infrared. Some of the other things, the transistors and that other stuff, I don't know about. I'm not an electronics guy, but I do know about night vision. And
well, Don,
I wasn't there. I don't know.
The folks nitpick on it because he was alive for a couple of more years, I think, after the book was written. He had plenty of chances to clear this up, and it wasn't cleared up.
There was other considerations.
Well, there might have been.
Do you want to hear what it is?
Well, I'm concerned that his son went to Italy to tell the truth and never published that here. I mean, that's very interesting that his son would only give an Italian publisher the rights in that language to clear the issues of the book.
By this time, Corso was up there in years. And when he went to Italy and he was coming back, he had planned to come out to California and we were going to get together. Unfortunately, he then died.
Right.
But his son, Corso's son, okay, yep. I got to be careful what I'm going to say here. Let's just say he ordered the old man around as the old man deteriorated. Okay? Now you take into that whatever you wish.
Yeah, that sure.
But yeah, I thought the guy was the real deal for whatever that's worth. And if you don't like it,
no, that's fine. It's just like when he brought up the stuff of the electronics and things. You can just go research that stuff, and that stuff was already being invented in the 20s.
Some of that was.
Right. That's what I'm saying is that maybe there was some other stuff going on. I don't remember the timeline between when the book got released and when he started having the issues and his son started to take control. But let's put it this way. It certainly would have been nice for him to separate the wheat from the chaff for us.
I agree.
Because we're never going to know.
Well, it's like everything else in this field.
His son's not going to tell us because his son made that call with that publisher. I'm only going to do it in Italian, in Italy, and nowhere else in the world. Really? Isn't that an interesting decision?
Well, let's just say that guy, his son, had issues. Okay?
Is his son still alive?
I believe he is.
Yeah. And that stuff is available now because it leaked out, like Scientology stuff and all that, right? I don't recall what it says. In fact, it's been so long. And I put a lot of quarters in Don, and he's filled me in on a lot of world history. So I've forgotten.
Now, a lot of us had no idea that Don Ecker is coin operated.
No, I talked to the Vixter about it, and she said, don't put a silver dollar in them. You'll regret it.
Yeah, all you're going to get is 25 cents worth of material, right?
I would stick to the 50-cent piece.
There you go. You'll get half of what you want.
Yeah.
The other half is go fuck yourself.
Wow.
I have been known to say that too, I believe.
I do know that. That's why I said it.
I think all of us have a fairly close brush with that munition.
Oh yeah.
Hey Don, would you say as he got older, you probably didn't see him, if what his son did to him is true, and I have that's very common that kids will start to manipulate their parents when things start to go off.
Especially when there's large sums of money to be made.
Yeah, or fame or whatever. Right.
Fame, power, and money.
Around the time that book was created, you talked to him at that point. Your view of his mental stability at that point was good?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, you know how I met him?
No, well, I'm sure you told me, but I don't remember.
Well, we had somebody at one point that had written a couple of things for UFO magazine. Now, I met this guy in '88, and let's just say I'm not going to mention his name. As a matter of fact, he kind of disappeared, but when I met him immediately, I hated him. Okay, and at a party one night, and I'm not bragging about this, but he got into my face about something. The guy was extremely left wing, hated the American military. Okay. And he had said something to me, and just to piss him off, I said, well, you know, buddy, a day without blood is like a day without sunshine. That was just to tick him, okay? And he did. He went off on me. And I said, fine. You know what I'm going to do? We were on a second floor, okay, of this building. I said, I think I'm going to pick you up and throw you off the goddamn balcony. And he looked into my face and he thought I was serious. And he literally ran away. And for the next hour, and I'm not kidding, he hid in a closet. But the reason I mentioned this guy, he had written something about Corso, okay? And of course, Corso, lifetime military, all the stuff that he did, okay? He hated Corso. And he really denigrated Corso. Now, somehow, Corso thought that came from UFO magazine. So I get this letter from Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso. I opened it up, I read it, and I realized that this guy was so mistaken. So I wrote him a detailed letter back, and I said, Colonel, I said, number one, I know who you are before anything about Roswell, because Corso had been very involved in MIA POW things, okay, trying to get the government, which is, you know, especially Vietnam, we still have a couple of thousand guys nobody knows what the hell happened to. Right. For a long time, there were reports coming out of Southeast Asia that those communists still had POWs, okay, locked up and other things. If you remember back in the 80s, Chuck Norris, among others, they all made movies about going in to rescue POWs.
Chuck Norris,
stuff, all right?
He's the man.
It was a big thing at the time. Well, Corso had testified before Congress about this. He really was pushing. So I knew who the guy was. So I said, look, sir, I said, I'm a Vietnam vet, combat vet. I said, I was wounded over there. Okay. And believe me, the last thing in the world we would have ever done is denigrate you. And then he realized he had made a mistake. And then our relationship kicked off with that. But yeah, I had the utmost respect for the man. I really did.
So your view of him when he still was of sound mind and body and such, when that book, let's say before it was released and after it was released, he was of sound mind and body. What is your view of why he wouldn't have tried to sue to stop that book or whatever if there was so many problems with it?
Well, there was actually talk about that. Okay. Look, some of the people that were involved with this, Vicky and I were on the inside, and I saw a lot of this when it was going on, and I've got to be very careful. I don't want to get my ass sued. Okay.
Yeah, of course. I'm just wondering if he was of sound mind and body, and he's a tough guy, gonna smack you in the face, right?
Money. Okay.
Really?
Oh yeah. He told me that he barely made nothing from that book. Okay. And look, I had a situation crop up about that time with another person in the UFO field that I felt I had just cause to sue his ass, which I went out looking for a lawyer. And right off at the top, no matter how egregious the situation was, okay, in order to start anything, I needed $5,000 to start.
Yeah.
And I didn't have $5,000.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do? You suck it up, Buttercup.
So are you aware of, because I'd like to find it, because I need to know more about it. Are you aware of, other than talking to you about the shenanigans with the book, are you aware of any interviews or anything he did with the media or the TV and stuff where he called out Burns and said the guy's a lying rat bastard?
No.
Really?
I don't at this time. No. Mark, it's been...
Well, no, Jesus. I don't either. I was very involved in this too, right? So that would have made a big difference for me. I don't dislike the guy. I don't know the guy. But all this ancillary stuff revolved around this book. And it again, a shit show, Cobra. A continual shit show with everything involved with this case.
Well, I want to throw one more into the mix. Was Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union behind the Roswell crash?
Now, that's the woman who wrote that book, right? From the Times.
Annie Jacobson, that's correct.
Yeah, right. And there's a lot of people that hate that woman because of what she wrote. I don't know.
Well, Stalin had a fascination with ropes. And it might explain that, because he liked braiding ropes. It was a hobby of his. I read this somewhere. I don't know. It might have been Mad Magazine.
Hey, wait, I think
good source. Let's not be flipping Mad Magazine under the bus.
His video is going to pause again. Where's that button to pause his video? Yeah. So Don and Cobra, did you ever read that book? Because I never bothered to read it.
I didn't read the book. I've read a lot of excerpts. I've watched a couple shows on it. There is some interesting things that are laced in there. I mean, but it ties in with the whole Area 51, the emerging activities that are going on. And from one part early on in my military career, there was, and I was working at, obviously I was a pilot, but my collateral duty was intelligence. And we used to get a monthly translation of, this is in the 80s now, of what was in the popular press, what had been translated and what was in periodicals inside the Soviet Union. And one of my absolute funniest and most loved stories was the propaganda explaining that the United States had aggressor squadrons, which we did. It was a known thing. And they were painted up to look like Russian airplanes. And this group of airmen flew all over the west and southwest of the United States, which was true. These are all true things that are happening. But they were attacking towns and villages in Arizona and New Mexico and brazenly showing the Red Star because they were trying to push the
Red Scare.
The Red Scare that was going on. And this is why they were doing it. Now, Mr. Hartwick's remarks.
The military is directly involved with this, Cobra?
This is what the Soviet press was selling to their citizens.
Oh, they were selling
in a translation to this. So Stalin has the man's obviously a psychotic. There's no, or a sociopath, or maybe a combination. He was like he's the Twix. He's left and right. He's got both those bases covered pretty well, considering the numbers of people that he killed just in the course of business. But he did have a high propensity for these kinds of events going on. I think it comes up short. Mr. Hartwick's remarks about protecting technology, I think, has a lot to do with this. Although every time I talk with Don on this, I back a little bit off on I don't think Roswell is what it appears to be, and I come back from that a little bit. There are interesting breakouts from this period going forward, and Mark, you're correct. I just don't believe the transistor came to us from extraterrestrial activity. I'm pretty sure what I saw as a kid in my high school physics class, that Bell Labs was playing around with this, and they had the drop of water, and they had the two positive leads and the negative lead, and they were able to get a large transference going through there. I really think that's where that came from. I don't think.
Well, as far as Annie Jacobson, she dodged me for a year.
Gee, really?
I tried everything to get on the phone with her. I wanted to interview her after her book came out. And I had, at the time, I was with Cyberstation USO. Shit, I even had the president of Cyberstation try to get in touch with her. And all she could ever get was, her assistant or aide or whatever. Right. All right. She never, ever, ever dodged me for a year. And I got to say, I'm not really surprised because, boy, I was going to grill her on the Area 51 business. She had two, if you remember in the book, she had two contacts, supposedly had been former Area 51 employees. And
where have we heard this before?
Oh yeah.
Break time.
Don, we're past break time. We got to go.
I don't want to.
All right.
But we gotta. So
I don't want to.
We'll be back, gang. We'll be back. So stick around. Boy, I wish I could have had a camera, Gary. When I said I don't want to. I could have got the look on your face.
Oh, I don't want to.
He's over there like this.
No, I wasn't just doing it. So is Chuck Norris up here.
I'm just trying to help Chanel out. I'm trying to be a friend to Chanel, because when Don gets going, I think he looks at the screen and sees nothing but his reflection. That's what I'm thinking. Hey, Cobra, you seem like you don't seem like a lunatic. So if I had to ask you,
I'm only one drink into my evening, Mark. So let's not get ahead of ourselves.
All right. If I had to ask you off the top of your head to mention or point to a case in this subject that you are very soft on, like, wow, I really do think there's something there. What case would that be for you?
I've been. The Ramseys have been friends for a long time, and they've done probably what I consider one of the best thesis studies on the Aztec UFO crash. The years of research, the documentation, the people that they lined up with, and I cannot remember they have a partner in that process. Aztec UFO captures my attention. Mark, without being too much of a mystic here and infringing into the lunatic part, I think there's some pretty interesting stuff in the Old Testament that points to some pretty interesting events that were going on. So I think that I think when you look at some of the drawings that come up, Jerry brought it up a little bit earlier with Chariots of the Gods. When you look at some of the drawings that were there, on UAP Crossfire a couple weeks back, we had the MUFON chief investigator, or is he director, who does the photo interpretation, Don? I'm not getting his title correct. You're on hot mic, but I read your lips. Thank you very much. I think you're a handsome man too.
Mark D'Antonio, yeah.
No, not Mark, the guy that we had on UAP a couple weeks before Mark.
Not the good-looking guy, the ugly one.
At any rate, there's stuff in the historical record that shows vehicles, things that are put into mosaics, murals, statues, carvings that just don't add up. It doesn't line up.
Right.
But Aztec is probably one of my favorite. I tend to find the really interesting breaking down cases to eliminate or term them to the military kind of cover-up activity because you're trying to cover something up. I fall out of great favor with a lot of the listeners when the Hudson Valley UFO activity really looks to me to be something that was under the creation of man. Now, where that technology comes from, if there's a transfer out of it, that I'm not comfortable in saying that, it's just all man-made without some kind of hand in divine inspiration or some other recovery technology. So I think a lot of those activities go on. I like eliminating a lot of them going forward on there. I fall in, again, huge disfavor with a number of people, but I am absolutely convinced Tic Tac, that is completely our tech. Where it came from, I'm not sure. But I believe that is us operating those vehicles, and there's a lot of reasons why it won't come out any further than that. And I don't know if everybody's tracked it, but at the Blue Angels flying at the air show on Long Island a little bit earlier this in the spring.
They saw it. Bogey.
One showed up in the background there for about 4 or 5 seconds. Same kind of look that it had. It was captured on some pictures and disappears.
What do you think of the Zamora case? Because that's one of my favorites.
I think that is one that is not easily explained to. There is a definite tie in there. I'm not well versed, but I agree that one has pretty strong capabilities.
I read the Randall book on that because, he was on here and I didn't know he wrote a book about it. It's interesting how he wrote the book because there's so limited information about that case. Right. He looked around that case, which was smart, right, also to make the book more than 20 pages. But I find it interesting because there's just not much available for something that happened in broad daylight to a cop, calling in another guy out there in less than 5 minutes. I mean, all of this stuff happened, and yet there's hardly any information about it. It's just fascinating.
Well, it destroyed the cop's life.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's a couple constants. I'm a math major undergrad, so in this equation, in this algorithm, to use the buzzword for everything's an algorithm because we're creating the perfect algorithm apparently because AI is going to save us from ourselves. Can't wait to see how that turns out. I've been to that movie and read that book in a couple different versions, so that nothing but a happy ending coming up there. But when you look at certain things that come up, the same types of people show up at these events. The same agencies or groups within agencies show up. There's a template that they execute. The destroying of people's lives is just the cost of doing business. And when you see those kinds of tragedies going on there, Don, what's that old expression? Just because I am paranoid doesn't mean they aren't after me.
That's right.
That is just part and parcel. And what drives me crazy about this is I heard this in a movie I just watched a couple nights ago. It was called Company Business. Gene Hackman and the famous Russian ballet dancer. I can't think of his name. Brezhnikov.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be in a spy swap, but there's this great line in there when they bring in this retired Gene Hackman, the retired CIA agent. Look, governments change, the bureaucracy stays in place.
Yep.
The bureaucracy is constant. And when you take that and you put it against some of the things that Don talks about, that you have elected officials who have a responsibility and have an authority to see that, but the bureaucracy puts it in special access programs, saps it so that it cannot be seen. And that not elected, not overwatched, not controlled group now promulgates that information and is basically making law and executing it. And again, if it's destroying people's lives, so what? We are going to go forward. Now, to me, there's no doubt in my mind that the level of discussion and disclosure that goes on now, the times that we're living in, the major event that's going to occur for this particular country in November, what's going to be happening in Europe between now and November, puts a lot of extraterrestrial UFO encounter, what the government knows, into play. Of all the elections that I've been around to listen to, and I've always had an ear for this particular part, this subject is now swirling and coming up more and more about disclosure, about things coming up. Has this information been weaponized? Will we have something that goes on? I think everything's on the table because we live in times, to me, that are unprecedented going on with this. And I think this particular issue is right at the heart of it.
I read.
Hold on 1 second. I didn't hear you, Mark. What'd you say?
Or is it just a distraction and another shiny thing?
Well, obviously, I think that there's always that possibility. And I think that people realize the power, because that's what happens. The number one way of doing intelligence work right now is crowdsourcing. We have a very compliant population globally. Okay. People are engaging and saying things online that they'll be very upset if somebody else finds this out about them, but they publish it on a daily basis about every facet of their lives. So when you see something major come up, it hits as an item, there are countless bureaus, agencies, groups of people that aren't even under official, that are sitting there without security clearances because you don't need to do it, and do nothing but scan the results of where the conversation is going. And those folks that are pulling the levers and pushing the buttons are trying to figure out, well, if my candidate isn't doing well and this event is getting it, this could be the thing that we're going to go forward. Again, no one likes when I bring it up. COVID is the pandemic and how that played down is the complete playbook for throwing it over. And all these things tie into this. We have not had fair, clear understanding what's going on because someone has determined it's for our own good. You can point back to the RAND studies in the 50s and 60s that said, if this information came out, the world's going to fall apart. The famous, economies will be shaken. There'll be a lack of people involved in religious activities. Churches will suffer. Religions will suffer. It's going to be anarchy. In the words of Dr. Venkman from Ghostbusters, cats and dogs living in sin. Mass pandemonium in the streets. And now I think we're at that point. Now I think we're at that point. So now we're figuring, okay, what will this do? Will it allow us to assert control to get the result?
As all you guys know, I was involved in intelligence in the military. So along with my 10 plus years as a cop, I look at a lot of things a lot differently than many do. When I say many, I'm talking about mainstream civilians. And in the last 3 years, and I'm, lest anybody think I'm going political here, this is not my intent. But for the last 3.5 years, almost 4 years now, we have literally had millions of people flood into this country. Basically a freaking invasion, okay? Nobody knows who they are, where they came from. I mean, all the countries, Syria, Iraq, Egypt, Iran, China, Russia, you name it. People have been streaming into this country. And I read something the other day that along with reports in the last 6-8 months, a year, of foreign nationals here illegally attempting to enter military bases.
Yep.
Cobra, you know about this, right?
Oh, absolutely.
This is what I read in the cities of New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Houston, Texas, Baltimore, and other big cities. Police departments have been suffering massive thefts of everything from uniforms to weapons. Even one city, I think it was New York, misplaced a SWAT truck.
It happens, Don.
Now, what the hell, with somebody with my background and Cobra with your background, what's that tell you? That this summer could be a real hell's a poppin' kind of thing if somebody has it in their mind to do another 9/11/01 type of operation, masquerading as law enforcement and other authority figures. That's pretty damn scary. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yep. And I want to link it to this. This particular, the main theme of the subject of your show and the disclosure that we talk about on KGRA, to many people, is just one more tool in the bag by which they are going to wield control or attempt to wield control. I think certain things have happened now that the concern, the backlash is getting there. I mean, you have people now that are they're at the point where they doubt everything. Everything. Every major institution, we talk about it endlessly. That's a very troubled place for a nation, a country to be at. And it's not just here. It is global that this situation is where it's at. I don't think it's going to take a lot for an event to.
Absolutely. Don talks about that all the time with me. Look, I just saw some people on a, let's say, a left side newscast, and they were telling me with a straight face that on YouTube, the algorithm favors Christian nationalism and the far right on YouTube. I mean, talk about head exploding. So what have I been hearing for the last 20 years from YouTube? You've got to be kidding me. But that's what we're dealing with now.
It doesn't seem the what my eyes are seeing, but I see a lot of things that I'm being told isn't what I see. Exactly. Unfortunately, I grew up in an era in this country where a somewhat classical education of 1984, A Brave New World, the Dickens classics was all part of the reading list as I went through school. So, right. In the words of the meme, 1984 is a book, not a how-to manual.
Right.
Just to...
Well, speaking of AI, Cobra, I've said ever since it became part of mainstream conversation, you want to know about AI? All you got to do is get the movie The Terminator from 1984. That will tell you everything about AI you need to know.
What could go wrong, Don? Don't be such a doomsayer. Come on.
Yeah.
You're going to get the call sign Eeyore. Oh, the sky's falling. Someone get a nail. Don's tail fell off. We have to reattach it.
Yeah, the Terminator. That's all you got to know about AI. What could go wrong? Skynet is alive and well.
And they actually use the word Skynet in some of the technology that we're fielding now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
It's so funny that with all of this, we're so connected, right? With all the social and all that. And this happened to me until I did some research. When I'm outside and I see this train of lights, and I come in and I grab my phone, and my wife's going, "What's up?" I go, "I'm seeing something." And I go out there and it's gone. I go, "Oh, son of a bitch." So then I call Dawn, I saw a train of lights. Oh! And then I go onto the web and it's Starlink. Well, I had never seen it before, right? But I still see it now. A bunch of people saying, "Oh, I saw a train and they're aliens and all that."
Hey, while we're on this subject, this is an interesting group. The Phoenix Lights. What's the take on the Phoenix Lights?
I think there's two issues there. I think there's the V-shaped lights that were somewhat stationary, and then I think there's that weird thing that people saw as it slowly went over. And I don't know if you guys saw this, and I can send it to you guys, and I think I talked to Don about this. Some new information came out where during that time period, they had these giant inflatables that were V-shaped, that they were actually flying. And I never knew of this until like 2 months ago. So I don't know. I was out to lunch, I guess, but they were giant V-shaped inflatables with lights on them. I mean, like as big as football fields, right?
So one of the things you're talking about, I don't have a designation on this aircraft, but this aircraft was flying late 70s, 80s. It was reported to be in Europe. It had very stealthy characteristics. It was extremely quiet. And of course, the big advantage of having that kind of capability is that you can loiter for a long time.
Right.
You can stay in a station. You're not burning a lot of fuel. And then when the darkness starts to slip, you motor away and you go off to your hidey spot to go do that. And that vehicle has been part of it. But people, I'm really interested in people's take on the Phoenix Lights. I find it a very intriguing case.
Well, I'll tell you a part about that story that bothered me. At the time, the governor of the state there in Phoenix was I believe he was Republican, and he was in some kind of either a political or maybe a law enforcement bind. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he went out and lied his ass off about that case and had a press conference where he even had one of his aides dress up like an alien to come in and turn the whole damn thing into a big joke. After he left office, the son of a bitch came out and admitted, well, I even went outside and I saw it. I don't know what it was.
Okay? We always suspected he was forced to do what he did.
Yeah. I think it was no doubt.
I'm from Phoenix, by the way, so it's like I've always found it interesting that he waited and waited. And now he's like trying to apologize to everybody that he had tread upon, mocked, insulted, and dismissed. And admitting now that he saw it too.
A councilwoman by the name of Frances Barwood, went out and
made some big demands.
Yes, she did. And she was destroyed and ridiculed for it. Just simply trying to get everybody to agree to do their sworn duty to make inquiries about what the heck this thing was. And they basically went after her, put a target on her, and they ruined her career.
Right. So again, I think it's two events myself. And I put a link down there where you can see the images of this thing, and they're freaking huge inside these hangars, right? I mean, giant balloons that are in that exact same shape. I'm not saying it was that, but I'm unaware that this came out back then. I only found this out like a couple of months ago, and I forget where. But these things are, ginormous, Gary.
I wish I could remember. There's an issue of Popular Mechanics from the 90s that actually had a drawing in one of their charts talking about, what they surmise this aircraft is based on reports. This is the silent triangle-shaped aircraft that was talked about in Europe, how it would spin around and then move, and some other stuff. I had the real joy of talking with Dr. Lynn Katai. I'm not sure if I'm saying her name.
Lynn
right.
Katai, yeah, you got it.
Tremendous guest on my show, and tremendous work. She now is involved with the museum there. I thought her explanation of what she had seen, her reporting of what she had seen, and the research that followed lends a lot of credence. And I forgot you mentioned can't remember the name of the friggin' governor, Symington. That's it.
Symington.
Symington. Yeah. Symington. Yeah. So I really enjoyed her take on that. I think that the two events overlap. I think part of it, and of course, there's always the Kurt Russell angle as well.
Yeah, people forget that he was the pilot that was in the air over Phoenix and saw it.
Yeah, he was flying back to Los Angeles. He flew his son there because he had a girlfriend in Phoenix, and they're flying back when he spotted it.
Well, which did he spot? Did he spot the light?
I think it was the first night's events.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they are, a lot of people don't know that it's two separate events, the lights and the big V.
Right.
Well, once again, we saw how the military tried to spin the story. They came out claiming that it was flares. Now, everybody here,
that's absolute bullshit.
Perfectly drop flares. They always drop like that.
Right.
Well, and the smoke as well. As far as I know, there aren't flares without smoke. So
generally, it's pretty hard not to see the smoke, even unaided.
Right. So I don't know what that thing was, but this big.
And this is not an unpopulated area. I mean, I know it's a large,
highly populated. It once it gets into the city.
So where did all these flares land?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Okay, and you, Jerry, honestly, I mean, Dawn in a jungle, they would find flares. Okay, with heavy canopies.
Right.
In a desert.
If I recall correctly, and I may be wrong about this, it was on the opposite side of the mountain when they finally blinked out. It wasn't over the city; it was on the
South Mountain or North Mountain, or Camelback.
I don't recall, but
I don't either.
I'm pretty sure they blinked out as they went below the mountain, which means that you would have had to have gone over there. Whatever's over there, but I found the inflatable craft thing to be hugely late, decades late, because they said that they were actually flying these at that time period in that area. And I was like, wow, why didn't we hear about this back then?
Because the absolute secrecy surrounding a vulnerable aircraft like that, there's no reason to tell the public. That's why we didn't tell the public that we were flying the SR-71 for almost 15 years into its existence.
Right.
And that's the reason why you didn't hear about this. These aircraft were extremely vulnerable, but what they could perform, what they could do, was incredibly.
In the late 50s, there were a lot of UFO sightings around the country, and the CIA historian, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name, came out finally and said, well, we were testing the SR-71 then. And, a lot of those sightings were probably the SR-71.
Sure.
And people wouldn't have known what that was. Now, look, I was in Okinawa when they were flying out of Kadena Air Force Base, routine missions with the SR-71, skirting North Vietnam, Korea, China. You could be driving down Naha Highway, all right, and they would stop traffic all over the place to let this thing take off. Now, why they did that, I don't know, but it was there. The SR-71 was there. Then it was gone. And the idea that civilians would have been seeing that on test flights always struck me as ludicrous. That's crazy, Okay.
Right.
This thing, number one, is pitch black, painted black. All right. They fly the damn thing. Supposedly they were flying this at night. You're not going to see this thing. And the damn thing goes, what, Mach 3, Mach 4, can go that fast. Hell, maybe even more. And it's
Definitely
there and
not
it's
more.
not.
Its top speed was like 2,600 something in that area. It's a Mach 2 plus, burgeoning close to 3. The only thing that could go faster than that was the X-15. That was the rocket plane.
Right.
There's just practicalities on it. But I agree with you, Don. This is one where I don't think you had much of a chance. The plane would take off. It would get up to altitude, and the first thing it does once it gets to altitude, which is someplace in the neighborhood of 35,000 feet, is it hits a tanker because it burns so much fuel in its climb up. It tops off. Very interesting variation of jet fuel. Once it topped off there, then it would make its climb and its dash. And they weren't skirting. They were flying right over. That was what made the SR-71 the capable aircraft that it was, because it could fly over the territory. In 30 minutes, it could photograph map the entire Soviet Union.
So here's an interesting aspect of these inflatables, and we didn't hear from them for decades, right? So people say, well, there's so many people involved, you'll never be able to hide this, you'll never be able to hide that, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I don't buy that.
Well, I don't buy that, because this wasn't the military. This was a private company building these things for the military. And yet a private company contracted out to them, and none of their employees spilt the beans, at least to the effect that the public heard about it, about this case, right? So you got to believe that if somebody who worked for this, a secretary or anybody, had photos or information, and you start saying, hey, this is what they saw or could have seen for the Phoenix Lights, that would have gotten out because of the interest is so high. That never happened. For decades, it never happened. And that's a private company keeping it quiet.
Well, there's financial as well as freedom issues that are involved in breaking those contracts.
And that's why the Earth is flat, Don.
I don't want to fall off the edge, Mark.
So how does the water stay on a flat Earth?
Magic.
Okay. That's the best answer I've heard from a flat earther. I've heard about the wall that's there.
I've heard that there's no gravity. The Earth
I heard that when I went to Antarctica, I didn't actually see or do what I did. I didn't circumnavigate the continent. That didn't happen. When I saw those ice fields, I was bumping up against the wall. I've heard it all.
That's right. And then you went inside the Earth and saw the dinosaurs, didn't you?
Well,
didn't you?
my dad was at the Battle of the Bulge. Later, he went to Korea, but all that got time compressed.
Right.
All right. He got it all confused. So.
Right. There you go.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. I just thought it was when I saw this, I was blown away because I was involved in this with Don and other people, and I'm like, wait a minute, this never came out. This never came out. So yeah, if you have a chance, check that link out, and you'll see the real photos of that thing. It's incredible.
Yeah, I checked it out. It's pretty cool. Now you brought up Korea there, Don, and I'm going to allow that to be a segue to my question. Because Andy Morrow, one of our listeners, he messages me privately. I wish he would stop. No, just kidding. I love his messages. But he wanted me to bring up something because there's been a problem with China buying up property in the U.S. It's always bothered me since the 90s, man. I lived in California for a while when I was in the Army. And they were buying up Vacaville. Not Vacaville, I'm sorry, the wine place, Napa. A lot of the property belonged to the Chinese there. And now we hear that they are buying a lot of property for farms around military bases. What the fuck, man? Is nobody paying attention?
well, let me ask you.
Bill Gates.
Let me ask you this: Do you remember in the mid '90s when Bill Clinton was in the Oval Office? Do you remember that the missile?
I remember those days.
The missile technology they gave the Chinese to get their rockets up and running. Commander Cobra, I know you remember that.
Oh yeah.
Now,
I don't think there's any money involved, though, Don.
No, no. I wasn't referring to money.
Oh, I am. I'm being very sarcastic.
Oh, okay. See, I'm
It's
a
another
simple
one of
guy.
the many features. Yeah.
Deuce, I'm a simple guy.
Break
If
out
you're
in a
being,
country song.
you gotta tell me if you're being sarcastic. I don't know, so you know. But anyway, they haven't been our friend forever. Okay, not since Mao ran Chiang Kai-shek all the way back to Taiwan. Do you remember the 60s? Do you remember the Red Guards? Do you remember all that? They haven't changed much. They just discovered they like selling shit, which, hey, everything I've got here, damn near. And I talked to my wife, my little timer clock here, everything made in China. Okay. We've been keeping them afloat, but they hate us. And if they're buying all that farm, what happens if stuff suddenly gets serious and they have all this land next to our military bases? What do you think might happen there?
Well, they have a lot of their citizens that are undocumented that are crossing the border. Maybe they just want to set them up.
Yeah, you think?
That's not true.
So they don't become a burden. So they're not a burden on the taxpayer. They want to be self-sufficient.
Right. I'm just a simple guy. If I can see this,
you're just a simpleton.
Exactly. If I can see this, what the hell are those yo-yos back in D.C. in Foggy Bottom? What are they doing?
Hey, Don, never go full simpleton.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm a complete moron, but I'm not saying I'm not a complete moron.
Hey, so in your UAP show, if you had to boil it down as best you can, both of you guys there, what's your most contentious subject that you talk about on that show, or what has been like the
politics?
Oh no. I mean with the UAP. All right, my name's not Martin. All right, so I'm just asking about what's your most contentious. Like it's pretty split, and you guys are like, we're just not going to agree on this.
I don't think that I would imagine the Tic Tac is about the only thing that really, you people kind of go. I was going to say right or left, but I wasn't going to give
right
or left. You go yay or nay,
right?
Man-made or not. I think one of the things that that's kind of fun, refreshing about the show is there's just a ton of news that comes out, and we discuss like all the events going on. And I mean, right now it's impossible to separate the weaponization of information and on this particular subject. And it's not strictly based on security. It's being packaged. It's being used as just another shiny thing to drive public conversation. I mean, how much more before you're at the tipping point? If we haven't tipped over, there are days that I'm convinced, this is it. Not to get too biblical and to upset Don's audience, but I'm pretty sure there's an angel, breaking a seal, given some of the events that I see going on around us. So, I think our biggest thing that we jump on is you hear something and somebody else has heard another version of it, and we have to work through the both parts of that. No one really can touch Don's historical record. I mean, it just can't be done.
Right. So
Mark,
wait, so when it comes to the Tic Tac, my knowledge of this is surface. My understanding of this is, whatever that thing is, there is no heat coming off of it. So how does it propel itself?
it is not using propellant lift like we do. That vehicle is being flown either with some kind of anti-gravity or some advanced ability to run a power source. The fact that it's hard for our sensors to get a good picture based on what? Based on what was recorded and we were allowed to see, not the stuff that was taken and grabbed. I think that there's such a change that's going on there, such a shift in technology, that there's two reasons why it's not more prevalent going on. Number one, it's so unbelievably expensive to operate, but it is being operated by humans. It's being operated by people that have the same kind of maturity factor that I have and are able to do this. The whole fact that we play around at Carrier Battle Group doesn't surprise me at all. The second part is it's so destabilizing to the entire world because our self-appointed, not even elected, our self-appointed betters are not going to allow that kind of absolute change to occur on this planet. There's too much money to be made. It's the old argument that you used to hear in the 60s and 70s about the oil companies are suppressing any other stuff going on.
Right.
There's the famous story about, I think it's a Cedron that's driving around and the guy claims it runs on water. All these people mysteriously disappear. If a patent comes out, the patents are bought out. They can never do anything. I remember as a kid in the 70s, there was a guy that created an oil filter that would stay on your car for the life of the car. You never had to change the oil. You just had to occasionally add some as you burned it up. And even that was considered a threat because every one of his patents, every one of his diamonds were bought out and was never allowed to go to production because a certain amount of the economy is running. I had guests in the past that had talked about anti-gravity or Tesla type devices that were dramatically going to change everything and at a very rapid rate to a point that it just could not be allowed because it was going to be too destabilizing. I've sat in think tank meetings where they talk about releasing certain kinds of technology out to the rest of the developing world at a pace that it doesn't overload the rest of the world.
Right.
This is insanity. This is absolute insanity. But this is man and this is greed and this is what happens.
So based on your experience, let's take the Tic Tac.
Yep.
They do a flyby, a test, whatever, and the Nimitz sees it. A bunch of people see it. What's the pecking order of anybody who might have any knowledge at all about this? Nobody on the Nimitz would have knowledge of this. They would just see how.
So when I talk, part of the ships that were in the battle group, one of the ships that was part of the Aegis cruiser was the Princeton, and I had a number of the sailors that were in the Combat Information Center talk about the tapes. One of the guys, his whole job was he basically ran the digital recording. That's what his job was. They had a helicopter show up. Everything was gathered up, and that material flew off by helicopter with individuals that didn't look like they were in the Navy. It was all grabbed. It was boxed up. There was a check to make sure that there was no remaining files, and it flies out. Now, they were fairly close to the coast of California, so you could have probably got somebody by a cod to fly it out to the carrier. And the Nimitz one of the ships I served on during Desert Storm, so it has a fond place in my heart. Could have had folks that were on board the ship for that. It could have been a very small select group going on.
Right.
Air Force, right?
Because
Yeah.
at the beginning of the recording, they
Force?
mentioned that there
Probably
was
Air Force.
fleet in the air, right?
So, Don, are you asking who controls the Tic Tac?
No, negative.
Oh, who
picked up
collected
the
it?
tapes? Yeah.
Oh, I have no idea how that's probably a DIA kind of collection right there. With the joint service kind of pickup, with all the high speed credentials that no, an 06 is not going to be saying anything but yes and how can I help you get it done kind of thing.
Right.
But another reason, Mark, that brings this up, when these things occur and they become public and it's packaged and it's prepared to come out,
Right.
I think that is to send a message to our very closest friends that are on a real estate farmland buying spree and others that we have this capability.
Right.
I think that they know that they have encountered things themselves, and now they have further proof that it isn't a one of, that it wasn't just the one of type thing that's going. This is a capability that's there, and that they need to stay in line. I'll give you a very small example. It's been reported in the open press that when the Israelis brought online their F-35, their particular version of it, they actually flew one or two of those aircraft over terrain. The plane got past all the radars, got past all the integrated air defense systems. It was visibly seen flying over the Capitol, and then it plays the old Romulan cloaking device routine and disappears out again. To let the Iranian mullahs know they had the ability to drop it down a pipe,
Right.
to drop it through a particular window unimpeded. They did it recently when they dropped a bomb very precisely, very close to a large suspected nuke facility.
Right.
Those are shows of force that try to, as Don was saying earlier, that the colonel like to, of course, I'll like to, give you a slap with the 45 to get your attention. I think that's what happened with Tic Tac. And I'm going to go one step further. I think it might have been something internal to the military apparatus as well.
Very
Okay, let me steer down a different street for a minute and get all you guys here. Recently, within the last few weeks, some papers were released from Harvard by some elitist academics suggesting that, yes, they are here, and we think they are walking among us. Now, obviously, I'm talking about ETs.
Oh, I thought you were talking about us.
The last few years, especially, and we have a gentleman that we frequently show with. As a matter of fact, he was just on UAP Crossfire last Thursday, Mark D'Antonio, who a number of years ago gave me a fascinating story. You guys have all heard it. When he was on board a submarine, he was doing some contract work for the military when they encountered a fast walker underneath the ocean waves, a USO. Now, a lot of those cases have been popping to the surface. Now, I'm kind of curious because probably on planet Earth, we have actually explored less than, well, somewhere between 5 and 10% of the ocean bottom. God knows what's down there. And it seems to me that would be a perfect habitat to place if you had people here keeping an eye on us for whatever reason, to do it beneath the surface of the ocean. I'm kind of curious what you guys think of that. Commander Cobra, what do you have
So
to say
your
about that?
technology is going to have to be pretty advanced. The acidic, corrosive requirement of salt water means that you have exotic materials or exotic techniques that keep the water from actually making contact with your craft, whatever that is. If you have that ability, your ability to set up a dry location under the water, if that makes sense. If I'm making sense, I say that. The ability to go to those kinds of depths, to be able to function, doesn't seem all that out of character if you have that ability to use the ocean and leave it and go back to it. I mean, for decades, we've heard about the activity of people seeing a craft enter and leave areas. What's the famous one off the coast in California, off Lemoore, where
they
there's
believe that
Santa
there's an
Monica?
underground cavernous system. Yeah.
right, and we have and we just happen to have an undersea range there that we do testing in the water and above it. Autech in the Bahamas is another one. You know, it's the Area 51 of the Navy where they do all kinds of. It's in the Bahamas and it does all kinds of advanced undersea work and testing and training. So absolutely, Don. Nothing. Very few things surprised me, but this one seems like a very obvious place to look.
Gary, what about you?
I think if you can displace time and space, just as simple to displace water, right? There's some sort of technology. As far as that Harvard guy or Yale guy saying, you know, they're here and they're walking around the streets of New Orleans and all that. Personally, what I think of that is that guy wants press.
Obviously, you have not been to New Orleans during Mardi Gras because I can absolutely give you.
I have been, and there's something fucking wrong.
Absolutely, I can tell you that there are some foreign bodies there, and there's a lot of activity going on there. So
I guess that's the wrong place. I chose the wrong location, obviously.
And on any given Friday night.
You should have said San Francisco.
No, that'd be even worse.
Nope, just as bad.
Bourbon Street kind of looks like that scene in the first Star Wars, the bar scene.
Right. My personal view, because I watched an interview with that guy, and it smacked to me as just being a case of trying to look for press and trying to get his name out there and all that. A lot of his assumptions were no different than Greer's. Right. So, but as far
exactly what I was going to say, it just sounds like another Stephen Greer.
Right, but as far as the ocean thing and all that, absolutely. And the Arctic and the Antarctic, right? Because there's a similar type of a thing there. Because there's nobody there.
Well, the Arctic is a pretty tough place to operate. I think the Antarctic, you have a much, because you at least have some physical land mass to work with.
Yeah, north, south, I get confused, but yeah.
Well, let me give you a quick one. You'll love this. You've heard of the constellation Ursa Majoris and Ursa Minoris, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The word Arctica comes from the Greek for bear, because the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper is Ursa Majoris, the big bear, the mother bear, which is surrounding and following the baby bear, which is where the pole star is at the end of it. But isn't it interesting that we only have polar bears in the north? There are no polar bears in Antarctica. And we got those names right.
Isn't that interesting? That's interesting. And
no one ever got to Antarctica before the 1900s or the late 1800s. Nothing ever happened. It's none of that stuff.
Oh, nothing ever. And that's
those maps from the 15th century.
It's just luck. Just luck. And these guys that drew these really accurate designs, you know, there is a very interesting group of people. Now you got me off on this.
That's all right.
Are convinced that Da Vinci flew, because Da Vinci has that famous quote, once you taste flying, once you've been in the sky, you will spend the rest of your life walking the face of the earth looking up. Now, where does that come from? And he had some pretty incredible machines and capability there. Did he create?
I believe his glider probably would have worked, and it's probably how he did it. Helicopter, I don't think could work.
Yeah,
even though they've tested the corkscrew recently and they got it to fly, I just don't think that he had the ability to get it to rotate fast enough when he made it. But I do believe his glider worked.
Yep.
Very interesting.
Which was shaped like a bird, wasn't it?
Yes.
His glider.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, guys, we are basically at the very bottom of the show. We've got literally
thank God
20 seconds. Commander Cobra, thank you so much as always.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to have you
It's
here.
a privilege, gentlemen. I love flying on the wing with you three.
Excellent.
All right. And Gary, Mark, once again, my friends, thank you so much. And on Thursday, and he has been watching us, Chris DiPerno, our other co-host on UAP Crossfire. Chris, myself, Commander Cobra, and I think Mark D'Antonio will be on. Join us at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern time. And in the meantime, have a great week, gang, and we'll catch you next week.
God bless
night.
Sam and Dean Winchester.